Senator Percy Downe is calling for a new Liberal leader to replace Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. In an opinion piece for the Hill Times, Downe writes, "The prudent course of action is for another Liberal leader to rise from the impressive Liberal caucus and safeguard those policies he was actually able to accomplish." Downe, who was Chief of Staff to former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, went on to say that the Liberals' re-election hopes rely on a new leader who is able to bring the party back to the centre of the political spectrum. For more on this, I'm joined now by Senator Percy Downe, who we've reached by telephone. Senator, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
I'd like to start with this op-ed you've published, the comments you made to the Hill Times saying it's time for the Prime Minister to go. Is this strictly your opinion, or are you speaking for a larger group that may be pushing for a leadership change in the Liberal Party?
Well, what I'm really saying is not so much the Prime Minister should go. I think the party should have a discussion over the next 16 or 17 weeks, and I say by March we still have lots of time. If the Prime Minister decides he wants to lead the party in the next election, then it might be helpful to outline some of the initiatives he intends to address the concerns that members of the party are feeling, or if not, if he decides to go, then we're on a new course. But certainly the Prime Minister has earned the right to make his own decision. He took the party from third place to first place, won the election. He's recruited some outstanding candidates for the Liberal caucus, so there's a very big talent pool there for his succession planning. And I think we just should have a discussion about it.
Well, you were a former Chief of Staff to former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien. You know how these leadership conversations can go in the Liberal Party, going back to the Paul Martin-Chrétien rivalry years. I mean, how helpful do you think this conversation could be for your party right now? Why do you think it should start at this moment?
Well, I think if you read the op-ed, and I'm sure you did, there would be nothing in that would surprise you. You would have heard it from Liberal MPs privately over the last number of weeks and months. So it's a discussion going on. It's just easier for me to do it than for people who have to have the nomination papers signed by the leader of the party. So
is that why you did this, Senator? Because others were talking about it but wouldn't go public with it? You've done this to sort of start the conversation on their behalf?
Yeah, and as I said, it's a conversation in a healthy political party, which the Liberal Party is. We have lots of time over the next 16, 17 weeks, and I say that time frame in case the decision is to go in a different direction. There would be time for leadership, but the Prime Minister has time to tell the party how he's going to address some of the concerns and where we are going forward. Now, if the Prime Minister decides to run, if Justin Trudeau is the leader of the Liberal Party, we're all behind him in the election. That may be the final decision, but there may be another decision.
But I wonder, look, I've heard various Liberal MPs grumbling about this Prime Minister and this PMO, but I've never gotten the sense it's risen to the point of a concerted effort to try to force a decision on Justin Trudeau. What is your sense? How widely held do you think this view is inside the Liberal Party?
Well, you should ask some of the MPs. At their retreat a few weeks ago, there was concern expressed, and it was expressed directly to the Prime Minister, is my understanding. I've heard from a number of MPs about that. And as I said to you earlier, the comments in the op-ed are not new to you. You would have heard them because you speak to MPs on a regular basis as part of your job.
I wonder, though, you saw, I don't know if you saw what happened today, Senator, but the Conservatives have seized on your words and are using it to hammer Justin Trudeau. Do you think this could have an unintended consequence in terms of harming your party?
No, I don't think so, because the view within the Liberal Party is that P.E.I can be defeated, and we just have to decide in the best course of action to do that. It's a very concerning time for progressives, not only in the Liberal Party but across Canada, with the program that the Conservatives would introduce. Everybody's trying to avoid them forming the government, and we need a healthy discussion about that in the Liberal Party over the next few months.
People see something like this, Senator, and they say, oh, he's doing this because he wants this person to be the next leader and this person to be the Prime Minister. Are you working with any potential leadership candidates, or is this an independent move by you?
None. I'm not working with anyone, and I likely won't support anyone. I think other people in the party can participate, but I've had my day on that area.
So if not Justin Trudeau to lead the Liberals into the next election, Senator, who do you think would be a good candidate? Who do you think would be a good list of candidates to run for that job?
Well, I mentioned some of them in the op-ed. As I said at the beginning of this interview, he's done an outstanding job, Justin has, in recruiting Canadians to run for Parliament. Very difficult in this environment. And he is an embarrassment of riches, if you will, in his Liberal caucus. I think there's some great potential leaders there, if that's the decision he makes at the end of the day.
So you mentioned that there is a belief within the Liberal Party that P.E.I, as you called him, Mr. Poilievre, can be beaten in the next election. If between now and, say, late February, early March, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau decides to stay on and lead into the next election, what do you think happens in that election if it is Trudeau versus Poilievre? Well,
I think the Liberal Party will rally behind the leader, as we always have done, and will make the case why the Liberals are the best rebuttal to what the Conservatives would force in Canada.
But do you think Mr. Trudeau can win that election, given where things stand right now and the fact he would be seeking a fourth straight electoral win?
Yeah, well, you know, the polls come and go, but that's why we need to hear, I think, a more detailed plan about what he intends to do to address some of the problems in the polls, and I think that's a possibility as well.
Okay, and just one final question, sir, on the time frame you've laid out, the next 16, 17 weeks. I know there's a historical symmetry of his father taking the walk in the snow at the end of February when he decided to leave. Is it sort of a historical symmetry you're pointing to there, or is it just having enough runway between then and when the next election is scheduled?
Well, you know, you don't know how long the support from the NDP will last, so this can't go on, in my opinion, until this time next year, because then you're out of time. If at the end of the day we get a new leader, that leader needs time. If Justin decides to run again, then he needs time to address some of the problems that have been identified, and that would give him the time to do that as well.
Senator Percy Downe, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks.
All right, well, the Prime Minister is playing down the Senator's op-ed calling for his possible resignation, despite that call picking up traction from across the aisle today.
Op-ed, he's calling on you to step down.
Sorry, who's that?
Senator Downe, a former staffer for Jean Chrétien, Percy Downe.
How's he doing?
He wants you to quit.
Oh, well, I wish him all the best in the work that he's doing.
Prime Minister save his political bacon, Mr. Speaker. And we know that because he's now admitted that his carbon tax is not worth the cost of oil for some people in some regions.
I don't think he should resign. I think he should face his fate when comes an election. I'm looking forward to that.
Also today, a rare political pairing with the NDP House Leader Peter Julian saying his party will back the Conservative motion calling for a carbon tax pause on all home heating fuels.
We believe that the panicked reaction of Liberals a few days ago, it seemed to be tied to electoral chances more than anything else, to create a situation where in certain parts of the country people receive some support in a difficult winter where they're struggling to make ends meet and to keep their homes heated, and other Canadians wouldn't benefit from that.
All right, just another day in Ottawa for the Power Panel to dig into. James Moore is a senior advisor at Dentons and a former Conservative cabinet minister. Brad Levine is with Council of Public Affairs. Shachi Kurl is the president of the Angus Reid Institute. And here with me in studio in Ottawa, Stevie O'Brien, a senior advisor at Macmillan Vantage and a former chief of staff to Liberal cabinet ministers. Hello, everyone. Stevie, let's start with you. What do you make of Percy Downe saying he's doing this because there's Liberal MPs who are saying this, but they're afraid to go public with it?
I heard from a few people that it was a little bit cute that the Chrétien team is promoting regicide, but that aside, there's no denying that there's been an increasing amount of pressure. It would be an understatement to say that the last 6 months have been difficult.
Yeah.
But I think that it would be, so I do not think that the Prime Minister should step down. I think it would be a mistake for the party. Whether or not he can withstand the increasing pressure is a separate question. So the party has done a great job. One of the reasons I think it's a bad idea is the party's done a great job of tying the Liberal brand to the Trudeau brand since about 2015.
Right.
And so going into a leadership race is going to be a real challenge for any of the contenders, and then we've heard the same names sort of floating around, to extricate themselves from that brand. There may be So I think for a variety of reasons, it would be a challenge, I think.
Okay, so James, on that point, right, the tying the Liberal brand to the Trudeau brand was a real strength for the party in 2015 when they went from third to first. Does it have the potential to be a liability right now? I mean, is Senator Downe onto something here? I don't know.
Obviously.
Well, you know, sometimes I have to just throw the softballs out, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I can read the data the same way as you can. You know, clearly, you know, the young, vibrant Liberal leader with the sleeves rolled up who is taking on Stephen Harper's machine back in 2015, now that it's 2023, and we've gone through a lot of battle scars, that Prime Minister Trudeau is clearly on the back nine of his time as Prime Minister, and whether he recognizes it or not, whether he's decided that it's over or not, in my judgment, if you look at the public opinion data, it's over. And you look at the data that came out last week, that, you know, the Liberals started in 2015 with 39% of the vote. They had 32% of the vote in the last election campaign. Of the 32% of Canadians who voted for him, 41% think that he should not be the Liberal leader in the next campaign. Right. It's over. And the question is, you know, whether or not the voters are going to end this or whether or not he's going to do it on his own. And I also think strategically it's a mistake for him to say, oh, how is Percy, and kind of laugh it off. And, you know, Bill Morneau was critical of him and he called him some random Liberal. I think a more wise move for him, if he does want to stand and fight and at least get through the next federal budget and put something substantive in the mirror, would be to pivot and just say, look, I understand that people can be critical of leaders in difficult times, but I plan to lead this party and lead this country, and watch me go to work, and then put something in the window. And he seems to sort of laugh it off as though it's business as usual. It's not. It's very much over, it looks like.
Brad, I wonder what you make of the NDP move today and how it fits into this, right? That they're going to side with the Conservatives. It's a non-binding vote on a motion to put the pause of the carbon tax on all home heating fuels, but it is taking sides, and it's not taking sides with the Liberals. And I've heard some expressions of annoyance with the Liberals from New Democrats. I don't know if confidence in supply is falling apart, but things are getting a little bit more difficult here.
Well, things are difficult for the Liberals, and they have been for quite a while. And this home heating fiasco, which pits one region of the country over others, is just the latest in a series of mistakes. Now, just quickly on Senator Downe's op-ed, and just for the folks at home, this man should be listened to because he's got a certain following within the Liberal Party. This man also took 2 years as Chief of Staff and parlayed it into 26 years in the Senate. He's still got 6 years to go. He's a young man at 69. That's the way it used to be done in Ottawa. Not a bad. So we probably should listen to him, because taking 2 years and parlaying it over 2 decades of a senator's job isn't too bad. But Senator Downe said in his op-ed that one of the reasons why Trudeau is losing public support, to James's point, is, I think it's self-evident, and I'm certainly, Sachi will speak to this, isn't because of fiscal imprudence. It's because it's due to things like cost of living. It's due to the fact that he's got no agenda, that he's on his back heel, that he's not on the offense on the things that matter to Canadians today. It's hurting domestically, and I think that this home heating fiasco is just the latest, but it's also on the international stage. Certainly the troubles that he's having with fights with India, the fights, obviously the war in the Middle East is certainly not helping the Liberal brand. We've seen his caucus divided over the tone and tenor that the government of Canada should be taking. So if he's going to put it together, he's going to have to do so in the next coming months, or to James's point, this thing is over. He's low in the polls, and that's when everything starts to crumble, both internally and with your friends in Parliament. Just quickly on the issue of Peter Julian. The NDP have a long history of supporting relief for Canadians when it comes to home heating. This goes back to Jack Layton in 2009, 2011. We've been trying to get the taxes off home heating for all Canadians, so it's very consistent to do so. I don't think it has anything to do with the senator's op-ed, though. Okay, no, it's just it's like a 1-2 punch of issues. Oh, it's just another bad day for Trudeau. Absolutely. Yeah. So Shachi, James and Brad have said it's over. I mean, what do you think? Where are we?
Well, I mean, that 1-2 punch represents bad news and also not very good news, and none of it represents good news for the Prime Minister. The concerning stuff here is not Percy Downe. Until this morning, I had not really thought about Percy Downe in a very, very long time. The problem is the Prime Minister's own Liberal voting base, which is split right now over whether he should stay on into the next election or whether he should go. There was a time when this Prime Minister had approval ratings of well over 60%. Today, almost 60% of Canadians want him gone before the next election. But crucially, and James mentioned this, but he didn't mention the other side of it, 41% of past Liberal voters, 2021 Liberal voters want him gone. It's not that doesn't mean that 59% or the flip side to the coin want him to stay amongst that Liberal group. It's only 44% of past Liberal voters. These are his own people who want him to stay on until the next election. That's the bad news. All the home heating stuff, the cost of living stuff, we spend a lot of time talking about that, so we know how he got here. If there is any silver lining for the Prime Minister in this, well, there's two things. First of all, you know, he's a stubborn guy. If he doubled down through SNC-Lavalin and tripled down through We Charity and quadrupled down through the Convoy and quintupled down through cost of living, stuff like this calls for him to go publicly. All that's going to do is stiffen his spine. He's not somebody who we know to kind of weakly walk away and say, oh, you don't want me? Okay, I guess I'm gone, bye. The other really crucial part of this is the fact that the people who are bandied about as his replacement have pretty crappy numbers themselves. When we look at who is appealing to swing voters, who would be appealing in terms of regrowing that Liberal base, who's appealing to would-be or current Conservative voters. You know, Mark Carney, his net negatives, which is a tool we use in political polling, -13. And that number is the best of a bad lot. It's even higher for Anita Anand, it's higher for Chrystia Freeland, it's higher for Melanie Joly. So in the absence of somebody who appears and could appear, I guess, in the next months, I suppose anything is possible, who really captures the imagination of either the center-left or the center-right, Trudeau is still the best person from a purely political point of view, which isn't saying much, but he's the best person to take on Pierre Poilievre, because any of his potential replacements would not fare any better. They'd likely fare worse.
Well, yeah, and Stevie, I mean, things can change. I remember not that long ago, Pierre Poilievre had massive negative numbers in a lot of ways in the polls, and look at where he's got the Conservatives now, right? By having.
But by the way, he still does personally.
Sure, but look at where the party is, right? You know, at this moment in time. So, Stevie, I mean, what's your response to all that?
I think the conversation we're having today, right now, is whether or not Trudeau, and I think the polls are reflecting that. But the conversation we're not having is yet, and I don't think Canadians have really turned their mind to, is whether or not Poilievre. Right. And what does a Poilievre Canada look like? And and what is at stake in the next election? And what's at stake is, you know, a Poilievre government will defund the CBC. It's going to be, you know, what else is at risk? Canada Child Benefit, the climate policy, childcare, dental care. So I think once Canadians start thinking not just current government fatigue or Trudeau fatigue, but really about what do they want the future to look like, right. I think you're going to see the polls shift, and that's the opportunity where the Liberals will have to bounce back.
Okay, I just want to check. I'm throwing a curveball at the control room. Tyler, do we have that Liberal ad clip available? I wanted to, yeah. So this is how the Liberals are, at least in the early stages of trying to change that conversation. Let's have a look at this.
Of taking the page of Donald Trump's book, but
what are you
also
talking about? What page? What page? Can you give me a page? Give me the page.
Fake news.
Fake news.
The left-wing censorship regime.
Their woke censorship ideology
have turned our once great cities into cesspools of bloodshed and crime.
Has unleashed a crime wave like we have never seen.
Okay, so James, this is a new ad the Liberals have put on their social feeds. It seems primarily, from what I understand, they're trying to keep the base a little bit happy because they're tired of the Liberals not fighting back at Pierre Poilievre. But I don't know if that's a preview of what we're going to see next year when the U.S. election cycle ramps right up. Is this the kind of thing they can do to have people asking that question Stevie raised of, should we pick Poilievre?
I imagine it is, but I mean, going into the 19 election and the 21 elections, don't forget the negotiations over the new NAFTA had not been settled with the United States and with incumbent President Donald Trump. So the Liberals didn't go there because there's a national interest that was at stake. Now that that's sort of passed and Donald Trump is back, then it's kind of fair game to go after him again, especially as a Hail Mary pass. With regard to the ad itself, I think it's pretty weak. I think it's pretty sad. You know, this is, you know, we're a G7 country. We've got war in the Middle East. We got Ukraine being invaded by Vladimir Putin's Russia. We have a housing crisis. We have an affordability crisis, and this is the kind. I mean, it's pretty weak. And you know, the word fake news. Everybody has used that at some point as kind of a pushback on things. You know, to associate Donald Trump and the ugliness and the vile. Like, I'm a never Trump conservative, always have been, proudly so. You know, the vile, corrupt nature of Donald Trump, and to say that that's in any way Pierre Poilievre, it's not. And to try to transpose that on him, I just think it's really weak and pretty sad.
You know, but Brad, James outlines all the serious issues that are around the table, yet in Parliament this week, the country's falling apart because 3% of Canadians got a break on their home heating oil. But I just, you know, I just wonder if this attempt by the Liberals to reframe things that way, you know, if that is the sort of thing that can help, because I think maybe this government's best moment might have been during NAFTA, when they seem to be in command of things. It's been a struggle kind of since then.
Yeah, and they had a broad, you know, coalition that helped civil society, business leaders, union representatives, all kind of fighting for Team Canada. So it was a unifying undertaking, and it probably was a high watermark from a little while ago. But as for the ad will only be effective if it's seen. You know, we can debate whether I actually thought it was pretty good. I don't know what you know, I'm sure Donald Trump is as unpopular in Canada as he's ever been. But, you know, for that to stick, first of all, it's a channel changer. It gets off, you know, the troubles that Trudeau himself and the Liberal government are facing. And it puts it back to, you know, it puts it on Poilievre and, you know, asks people to have another look at this guy and what he's really like. But it has to be seen. You have to put a lot of weight behind it. You got to start spending some of that money, whether it's on social, whether it's, you know, on the you know, NHL or you know, Grey Cup CFL playoffs. You got to put it where Canadians and the target audience's eyeballs are. You can't just, you know, hope to get some earned media out of it and then in 2 days change it. It's got to be sustained. It's got to be heavy rotation over a long period of time. Then you got to measure to see if you've moved the numbers and increase Poilievre's negatives. That will only help the Senate Liberal caucus and maybe trying to get them to back off Trudeau calling for his resignation.
Okay, I know your contempt for the Senate is oozing through in all of these answers.
Oh, yes.
You know, he did kick them all out of the caucus, and, you know, maybe that plays a role in this. But, you know, Shachi, on that point from Brad, that this needs to be seen, I mean, that's millions of dollars you need to spend. I'm not sure they have that or are ready to spend that at this point in time, given the fundraising advantage that the Poilievre Conservatives have demonstrated. But, you know, this seems to be the only path for the Liberals, right? Because it's tough to bring Trudeau's positives up. You need to bring Poilievre's positives down, right? That would be the only tactic at this point.
It's not necessarily too late for Trudeau, but it's certainly a very, very hard hill to climb after 8 years. But remember, this is the guy who's been down to 30% approval before, almost 60% disapproval in the past, and managed to climb back out of it time and time again, managed to get a bit of forgiveness. We saw his approval numbers, you know, starting to touch 40% a year ago, around the time of the Freedom Convoy hearing. So it's not impossible, like stranger things have happened, but I think something else that Canadians don't have a lot of appetite for is that super negative race to the bottom. Trudeau's negatives are terrible. Pierre Poilievre's negatives are not great. Let's just remember what is first and foremost in Canadian voters' minds these days. Can they get access to primary health care? Can they balance their checkbook? Can they pay for that home heating or whatever form of energy that it is they need to pay for? There's a lot going on, and you know, a one-off social media ad equating Poilievre to Trump, you know, there's a lot of conservative voters and a lot of donors to the Conservative Party who don't hate Donald Trump for better and for worse, and who would say, you know, hey, yeah, fine, that's fine. Let me write another check because we don't have a problem with that. So maybe not the best tack to take, but you know, there's so much. The Percy Downe said one thing. He said polls come and go. And that was sort of the only thing that was really quite interesting in that interview from my perspective. And he's not wrong on that. It isn't necessarily too late, but this is increasingly looking like a government and a PM that is played out.
Yeah, I don't know if it would be a one-off ad like that, because I know the Liberals I speak to are counting on the U.S. election cycle to maybe help them a little bit. But Stevie, you've been outnumbered, so I'll give you the last one.
I would just say Trudeau's one of the best campaigners the party has. He has, the writing has been on the wall before with the polls, and he has repeatedly proven skeptics wrong.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if he has another trick up his sleeve. And I mean, given the current context, he'll need it, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has it.
Up his rolled up sleeve for the campaign trail. All right, thank you so much, gang. Stevie O'Brien, Brad Levine, Chacha Curl, and James Moore. I always appreciate it. Thanks so much.